Nos encontramos en el auditorio Fernando Gómez Martínez del Politécnico Colombiano, Jaime Isaza Cadavid. Tenga presente las siguientes recomendaciones. Mantenga su dispositivo móvil en modo silencio. Evite consumir alimentos y bebidas dentro del auditorio. Recuerde que este es un espacio libre de humo. Ubique las salidas de emergencia a los costados del escenario. En caso de evacuación, conserve la calma. El Politécnico Colombiano Jaime Isaza Cadavid es tradición e innovación. Nos encontramos en...
Buenos días. Sean todos bienvenidos a la Feria de Investigación del Politécnico Colombiano Jaime Isaza Cadavid, un espacio que exalta el conocimiento, la innovación y la creatividad de nuestros investigadores, docentes y estudiantes. En esta versión, bajo el lema Ciencia y Tecnología al Servicio del Territorio, reconocemos el papel esencial de la investigación y la creación como motores del desarrollo sostenible, el bienestar humano y la transformación social. Nuestra feria se ha consolidado exitosamente en esta oportunidad, producto de una importante sinergia, el apoyo institucional de la Facultad de Educación Física, Recreación y Deporte, sumado a la diligente y experta colaboración de la profesora doctora Berta Aurora Muñoz Rodríguez y su grupo de investigación, COMAEFI. Adicionalmente, contamos con el apoyo del docente Edilgardo Loaiza. El conocimiento es el motor que impulsa la transformación del territorio. Invitamos al rector Jairo Alexander Osorio Saraz a presentar un saludo de apertura.
Tengan muy buenos días para todos, todas, todes. En esta mañana tan especial, donde vamos a tener el inicio de esta feria de investigación, la Feria de Ciencia y Tecnología al Servicio del Territorio como lema que tenemos especial. Un saludo muy especial también a todos los miembros de la comunidad politécnica, a los vicerrectores, a Jorge, vicerrector de extensión, a Oscar, vicerrector administrativo, Carolina, vicerrector de docencia, a la doctora Flora de Control Interno, a Caterine, por supuesto la anfitriona de este evento, y a los demás directivos, decanos que aquí nos acompañan, docentes, estudiantes, y por supuesto a los invitados especiales. Hoy, en esta feria, podemos contar con la participación que siempre nos ha acompañado la profesora Berta, la investigadora principal. Tenemos al doctor Edgardo, que nos acompaña también como investigador. Tenemos 6 conferencistas nacionales, entre esos dentro de la feria hay unas conferencias muy chéveres, por decirlo así, donde nos van a hablar sobre las comunidades indígenas, ¿cierto, directora? Y sobre todo los procesos ancestrales que se tienen. Y hoy la feria se está desplazando no solamente aquí en Medellín, sino que lo estamos haciendo en esta oportunidad, en la primera vez de la oportunidad que lo estamos haciendo en el Centro Regional de Río Negro, en Apartado, y esta feria tendrá 3 ejes temáticos especialmente. El primero es la sostenibilidad del desarrollo en el territorio, un eje muy importante, bienestar humano, desarrollo social y gobernanza, innovación, tecnología y narrativas digitales, y en ellas esperamos participar activamente con nuestros 67 semilleros de investigación, nuestros 15 grupos y 95 docentes investigadores de la sede. No es de menos darles un saludo muy especial a nuestros conferencistas internacionales, al doctor Osvaldo Acosta de la Universidad Federal de Visosa, que esperamos se encuentre en la tarde de hoy, profesor Thomas Norton, que nos acompaña de la Universidad de Leuven de Bélgica, al profesor Flavio Alves Damasceno, que nos acompaña de la Universidad Federal de Lauras, y todos los profesores y docentes que se están integrando de manera activa a este proceso. Decirles que el Politécnico viene creciendo en todos sus procesos también de investigación. El aporte que nosotros hemos tratado de realizar en estos años, en estos cortos periodos de administración, es de tratar de pasar de un presupuesto mucho más amplio hacia lo que es la investigación en la institución. Pasamos de un presupuesto de casi de 1.800 millones de pesos a tener hoy un presupuesto alrededor de los 4.000 millones de pesos, buscando fortalecer todo el sistema de investigación institucional y por supuesto todo lo que ello deriva para que el Politécnico, que es una institución acreditada, y dentro de esos fines misionales, uno de ellos, que es la investigación, pues sobresalga en ese sistema tan importante para nosotros. Decirle a los conferencistas internacionales, Tomás, Flavio, and Professor Osvaldo, that you are very welcome to our institutions, to the Politécnico. It's the first time that you are here with us, but it's very important for us, your presentation, that you will share with us about your expertise in your field of the knowledge. Ao professor Osvaldo da Costa e ao Flávio, muito bem-vindos. A gente está muito feliz de ter vocês aqui e esperamos compartilhar muito tempo mais com vocês, não somente nas palestras, sino também com os grupos de pesquisa aqui na nossa instituição. A ustedes, los estudiantes, a todos, muchas gracias. Ok, muchas gracias. Y por acá me están dando un datico que hoy, por primera vez, vamos a tener traducción simultánea en nuestra institución en esa feria, que también va a ser de grande ayuda para todos los asistentes al proceso. Profesora Catherine, mi partner, mi amiga, muchísimas gracias por ese empeño especial. Y cuando uno hace este tipo de actividades junto con toda la comunidad, los decanos, con todos, pues uno se siente orgulloso y lo importante es dejar la semilla sembrada. Muchas gracias a todos y feliz día.
A continuación, la vicerrectora de docencia, Carolina Tolosa, les brinda un saludo.
Buenos días para todos. Hoy el Politécnico Jaime Isaza Cadavid celebra su espíritu más audaz, la Feria de Investigación 2025. Queremos dar la bienvenida a profesores, estudiantes, invitados y aliados. Estamos aquí reunidos porque compartimos una profunda convicción. La investigación es el motor que impulsa el desarrollo de nuestra región y de nuestro país. Pero la investigación en el Poli va más allá de las fronteras académicas. Como institución de vocación tecnológica, tenemos el compromiso de aplicar la ciencia para resolver los desafíos más apremiantes de las regiones, desde la sostenibilidad ambiental, la innovación tecnológica y el impacto social. La investigación formativa, liderada por nuestros semilleros de investigación, se enfoca en resolver desafíos locales generando conocimiento pertinente y soluciones innovadoras en pro de la materialización de nuestra misión, la transferencia del conocimiento que impacta directamente en la ingeniería, las ciencias agrarias, la administración, la comunicación, el deporte y la recreación. Esta feria es una celebración de curiosidad. Es una celebración de la curiosidad incansable que esperamos sembrar como semilla en cada uno de nuestros estudiantes. Y es el compromiso de esta institución para el progreso del territorio y del país. La ciencia y la tecnología siempre debe estar al servicio del territorio y no nos cansaremos de reiterarlo en cada uno de los espacios que nosotros lideraremos desde la Dirección de Investigación, la Vicerrectoría, la Rectoría y todas las áreas de la institución. Para los estudiantes tenemos que decirles que son los constructores del futuro. Ustedes tienen en sus manos que el progreso del país se materialice y que la innovación tecnológica vaya al territorio en cada una de sus disciplinas. Les agradecemos el compromiso y estar aquí con nosotros siempre de manera tan irrestricta y los invitamos a que nos acompañen en todos los espacios de la feria porque va a tener una agenda muy diversificada. Todas las disciplinas, todas las áreas del conocimiento van a tener lugar. Investigadores, la dedicación de ustedes es incansable y les agradecemos inmensamente todo el apoyo que nos dan. Sé que a veces es retador y difícil, pero contamos que el esfuerzo de ustedes no va a ser en declive, todo lo contrario. Cada día va a haber más compromiso, más aumento y, por supuesto, desde la administración, más apoyo y más recursos. Muchas gracias por estar acá.
Invitamos a la directora de investigación, Caterine Manjarres, que nos compartirá la visión de esta feria.
Buenos días para todos, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí. Hoy en el marco de esta feria de investigación queremos resaltar un principio fundamental que orienta la política científica nacional, la ciencia como un derecho. Este enfoque, impulsado por MinCiencias, reconoce que el conocimiento, la tecnología y la innovación no deben ser un privilegio de algunos pocos, sino un bien común, accesible y útil para todas las personas y los territorios. Bajo este espíritu, las políticas orientadas por misiones proponen que la investigación y la innovación respondan a los grandes desafíos del país, aquellos que tocan la vida cotidiana, aquellos que tocan a las comunidades y que tienen que ver con procesos como sostenibilidad ambiental, la seguridad alimentaria, la salud, la equidad social y el desarrollo productivo regional. La ciencia, entendida así, se convierte en una herramienta transformadora. Un espacio donde universidades, instituciones, empresas y comunidades trabajan juntas para poner el conocimiento al servicio del territorio. En este sentido, esta feria no solo celebra los resultados de investigación, sino también el compromiso de todos quienes creen que investigar es construir un país desde la ciencia y para la vida. Damos apertura oficialmente a este espacio por 3 días, donde estaremos en distintas áreas enseñando y mostrando los resultados de investigación de semilleros, de grupos de investigación. Tendremos un espacio para el reconocimiento de los investigadores y de los grupos de investigación el día de mañana, y el viernes estaremos con la presentación y la representación también del Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología en un taller de cienciometría. Sean todos bienvenidos a este espacio.
Durante estos 2 días tendremos un control del tiempo para las ponencias a cargo de John Colorado. Iniciamos esta jornada con una conferencia magistral a cargo del Dr. Thomas Norton, profesor asociado a la Universidad Q Leuven de Bélgica, editor y jefe de la revista internacional Computers and Electronics in Agriculture y referente global de ingeniería agrícola y ganadería de precisión. El Dr. Norton ha liderado investigaciones pioneras que integran la visión por computadora, aprendizaje profundo y dinámica de fluidos computacional para optimizar la ventilación, el bienestar animal y la eficacia productiva de sistemas agropecuarios. Su aporte a la digitalización del sector agropecuario abarca campos como la acuicultura de precisión del desarrollo, sistema de riego predictivo y las técnicas sostenibles de procesamientos de alimentos. Para esta conferencia contamos con el servicio de traducción simultánea a cargo del traductor Luis Uribe.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank Alex, Carolina, and all the organizers for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm really, sorry. Okay. No, it's fine. This is good. My area of expertise is in precision livestock farming. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about what are the opportunities and challenges for precision livestock farming. Of course, I'll talk about the European perspective of it, and then maybe you can think for your own applications and see are there possibilities to adopt and maybe to collaborate. So where I'm from is Catholic University of Leuven. This is a picture of a typical building in Leuven. It's a very medieval city with a lot of history. It was actually knocked completely during the First World War and was built up. And now the university is one of the top in Europe. Next slide, please. So if you ever want to go to Leuven, Leuven is basically very close to Brussels, the very center of Europe. So you have no excuse to visit us. You can visit us if you want to go to Europe. Come and visit us. We're only 25 kilometers away. And from there you can go wherever you want to go. Next slide, please. So there have been many different things happening in Leuven. Many of you will know, for instance, Erasmus. It's a very famous staff and student exchange program. Actually, Erasmus was one of the scholars that was based in the Catholic University of Leuven, and he promoted this whole idea of exchange. And some famous things happened. You know, Leuven were based in the Dutch part of Belgium, but during the 1950s there was a major split between the Dutch and the French part. So actually you will see another university called Catholic University de Leuven, and that's based in the French part of Leuven. So you might get confused. But anyway, the main campus is in the Dutch part. We're also quite well established when it comes to the development of technology. For many years, Reuters ran this program on who are the most innovative universities, and that means universities that focus on the development of, the development of technology with companies by technology transfer, writing patents, copyrights, and so on. And the last time this was done, we were ranked #1. So that's one of our major focus, and that's actually also part of the reason I'm with Catholic University of Leuven, because I really like to bring the technology towards a solution for farmers. Please. Okay, so I'm going to talk about livestock farming. And of course, when we think about farming, if you look at it from an engineering perspective, it's a very simple system. You have inputs and you have outputs. The problem is there are a lot of inputs and a lot of outputs. So farmers, in terms of what they need to control, we think about feed, energy, water, we think about medication, and we think about labor. And the farmer needs to optimize these inputs to deliver food, meat, milk, at high quality, ensuring welfare, reduced medication. So what the farmer has to do is optimize a lot. And that's what we try to do as engineers. We try to help the farmer with this optimization. Of course, it's not easy for him because, please, because there are disturbances on the system, disturbances on the system which are unpredictable for the farmer, and therefore we as engineers need to help him or her deal with these disturbances. Please. So in Belgium, we have this situation where we see a major consolidation of the agricultural sector. I give you an example of pig production. Pig production, we see basically since the last 20 years, the number of farms have dropped by 50%, so halved. Meanwhile, the number of animals farmed per farm have doubled. So there is a real consolidation, increasing of the intensification of livestock production. And the farmer needs to do that in the face of different challenges. In terms of external challenges, of course, there's a pollution problem. You see a picture here down the left-hand side. That's the real intensive areas of production, of pig production in Belgium. And there we see a lot of problems with nitrogen, a lot of problems with ammonia emissions. And therefore, these are challenges the farmer needs to be supported with, given the regulations that exist in Belgium. From an internal perspective, on the farm, I heard already many people talking about the age structure of farmers across Europe and also across America, but particularly in Belgium, the age structure is at the moment, it's focused mainly around the older farmers. So there's a lot more older farmers than there are younger farmers. In fact, most of them are close to 70. So therefore, another reason that we need to support them, please. So these are just some pictures showing the level of pollution. And pollution in European agriculture is one of the big problems that we face. Maybe it's not that big an issue here, but given that we have a lot of regulation in Europe, reducing pollution is the main driving factor across all the European member states. Here is a picture of the ammonia emissions across Europe. And what's very interesting to see, you don't need any numbers on this picture, but what you see is the red spots, and the red spots tell you where the major livestock production areas of Europe are. North of Italy, Catalonia, and Belgium, the Netherlands, and also some part in Ireland, which is covered up there. But there you see that where livestock is being produced. So there's a lot of pollution. And it's also the same in terms of the rivers. So there you see picture of the pollution of river streams, and there most of the rivers are over the agreed targets. Please. In terms of animal welfare, in Europe, it's one of the major, I would say, guidelines or regulations that they impose on farmers. So there is a lot of standards around around stocking density, around the climate, the temperature, humidity, ammonia concentrations, but also there are really increasing levels of welfare standards. Soon they're bringing in a standard called the cage-free age. Basically, all caging of animals will be stopped in the future. And that's really difficult because much of animal livestock production has been based on cage systems in the past. So it's a massive transition for the farmers. And, there are a lot of people who look at agriculture in a negative way because of this caging, and they say, okay, we want animal production to be obsolete. But indeed, I think it's about helping the farmers to improve and move through the transition. Please. Okay, please. So in terms of the disturbances that a farmer faces, one of the major disturbances is climate change. And we spoke about climate change for many years, but actually we just said it's on the verge of happening. Now we're really experiencing climate change. We see in Greece that there has been major fires because of the drought, also in Italy. So it's moving through Europe at a rapid pace. This summer was one of the driest summers on record. In Belgium, there was a lot of broiler houses where animals died because we couldn't cope with the level of heat. So this is one major disturbance to the farming system. Please. Also, biosecurity is another one. We had also issue with African swine fever. Every day now, we also have an issue with avian influenza. And this is a major concern because farmers have to change what they do. They have to lock up animals in their house, and then they reduce their production because of this. So diseases, biosecurity, and so on is a major disturbance also. So just to give you another bit of the situation in Belgium. So effectively, in the pig sector, we have to reduce the amount of animals that we produce. And that's happening also in the Netherlands. It's happening also in Germany. And it's, again, to do with these environmental restrictions that we see. But of course, reducing the animals is only one part of the equation. And this is the part the government is focused on. The part we're focused on is the technology to minimize the environmental impact and the welfare impact. And therefore, if we focus on this, we can allow farmers to work to a profitable level without having to reduce the number of animals per farm. So we see at this movement between both angles happening, and we're just trying to help farmers go through this situation. So precision livestock farming, we believe, is core to the whole thing. I don't expect any of you to read this, but the reality is this is a definition of precision agriculture from the International Society of Precision Agriculture. And in this definition, I also talk about this to precision crop scientists. In this definition, they also talk about what they call individual data. And in the individual, they refer to they not only refer to plants, but also to animals, also to people that are working within an agricultural system. So basically, it's the development of support systems for farmers. And we utilize this definition below, which is about using the techniques from process engineering. So when you go to a chemical factory or a food factory, you see a lot of process design. And what we want to do in our research group, but also many research groups, is to try and bring the methodology of process engineering into livestock production. And that's a big challenge because farmers don't think that way, but we need to change behavior in order to help them. Please. So, yeah, you need to. So this is a scheme that represents the control system that we think about the farming system as. So basically, we have the animal which is in the center, and the animal is, getting inputs of feed, environment, medication, and so on. The animal is then responding to those inputs. So they're growing, they're getting healthy again, or they're changing their behavior. What we want to do, please, what we want to do is try and measure as much as possible the inputs and the outputs. And for us, what's key, as a scientist involved in precision livestock farming, is the development of models to try and predict what the animals would be doing. And that's what I call here the real-time individual model. So that's core to the whole process. Also, when you think about that, there are a lot of devices, a lot of sensors involved. We work a lot with camera technology, and here I am today to talk about AI. If you think about what sensor system is utilizing AI the most, it really is camera technology. I'll talk more about that a bit later, but we want to take all that data that comes from these sensors and transform them into information. Please. And this is really key if we want to add value and bring the technology to the sector. And for that, we need to work with the farmers, and we need to work with the industry. And therefore, thank you. And therefore, the key thing is to ensure that that technology is both accurate and it's delivering value. Okay. So if we were to think about precision agriculture and you say, okay, I think about precision crop production, there's a lot of technologies out there for instance, phenotyping, monitoring crop production. There's different solutions, whether it's spectral data, whether it's just standard environmental or camera data. But if you look into the middle here, you see, okay, you do the same thing also for animals, except the animals are moving, right? That's the big difference. The animals are moving, so it's not easy to predict from 1 minute to another what they would do, but that makes it very interesting for us. But there are a lot of challenges. So there's you're collecting a lot of data. A lot of that data, for a scientist, is not that interesting. It's very noisy data, a lot of redundancy in the data, and it's space and time dependent. That means the work in trying to process this data is very challenging. And that's the interesting part. And of course, we end up trying to focus our publications in those key journals that support our field. Please. Okay, so please, yeah. So you see there the animals are moving compared to the crop. So what we try to do in our research team is we're trying to work with different stakeholders. And we're measuring different indicators from the animal, health, productivity, and welfare. We pass that on to a stakeholder. And the stakeholder is not necessarily the farmer. Our first work is not done with the farmer. That might be surprising to people. Our first work is generally done with a breeding company or with a feed company or another company who is servicing the farmer, who is giving a solution to the farmer. What they want is high quality, accurate data and information. So we process that data for them. The next step you see over there is the husbandry support for the farmer. And that's where we try to work with the farmer to find where is the overlap. Where can we provide value using the techniques that we have developed with the other stakeholder? And that's not easy because those technologies can be very expensive, very difficult to implement, and also maybe don't provide the level of data that the farmer would like. So it makes it a challenging situation, but an interesting one, because in the end, if we don't support the farmers, then we don't support the animals. So that always has to be our objective. So if you were to think about the technology that's out there, there's many different devices out there. You can buy them off the shelf. You can buy thermal cameras, you can buy, nowadays, microphones, cameras, you can buy sensors to measure heart rate, movement, you name it. There's many different indicators you can measure of an animal nowadays. If you go to the next one, the challenge is actually what we measure often is not actually what we want to monitor. So we might measure a heart rate, or we might measure a sound in a house, but what we really want to hear is the coughing of the pig, or we want to know, is the pig now not eating? So that means the raw data that we get off that sensor is really not telling us enough, because in the end, we want to move towards a target variable, and that's a variable that's associated directly with the health and welfare of that animal. That means in the center, we have to have a combination of hardware and software. And the hardware you can buy off the shelf nowadays, it's becoming more robust. Maybe, it's not completely suitable for agricultural applications, but it can be moved forward in that direction, no problem. But the core part of it is the algorithm development, the software development. And that's where we work with. So I'll give you a few examples. So one example is sound monitoring of pig houses in order to detect coughing of pigs. And here you can see a picture on your left-hand side here, which is showing you the type of signal that you get from a house when you measure the sound. And here is a picture, in the graphs here, you see a signal of animals coughing inside. But it's not only animals coughing, of course. There's also somebody banging a door. There's also a dog barking outside. There's also a feeding system going on. There's many different sources of noise, but you really want to get to the signal that represents the pig coughing. And that's the big challenge. And that's the work that we did for many years. On the right-hand side, you can see a result of doing a cough detection in the house of pigs. And these pigs are moved from the nursery into the production system. So it's following them through their life, that 6 months that they have of living. And you can see the signal at the beginning, they're coughing a lot, then it goes down, then after a few weeks, it goes up again, they start coughing, and then after a while, the farmer treats them. But the thing is, the farmer did not treat them at the time. You would see from the graph that they needed to be treated. So it's very interesting to have this kind of data and then allow the farmer use it to judge with his vet what is the appropriate time of treatment. And of course, then what follows from that is better efficiency, please. And here is just some validation work that we did. We just showed the red graphs, the red parts of the graph show that we could find a very nice correlation between the lung lesions that the people found, the vet found in the slaughterhouse, and the signal that we found in the pig production. So it's a very important signal. And we were able to prove that in this study. Now this is being marketed. It's on the market for farmers. The thing is, it's only part of a solution. It's only measuring cough. There is many other applications of sound. It's a very interesting but really challenging variable. But at least something is coming out with this technology at the moment. So I'll talk a little bit more about monitoring on group level. So in the coughing, you're monitoring the full house, right? You're monitoring the full house, and you're listening everywhere. With cameras, you cannot monitor a full house. You can only monitor a small, limited field of view. This is work that we did with a company a few years ago, which was looking at the activity behaviors of chickens in a broiler house. So effectively looking if they're moving and looking if they're grouping together. And there was a number of cameras installed in the house. So here it was like 3 or 4 cameras that were installed, and the data was interpreted then to see, are these animals moving the way we would expect them to move, and are they in a pattern where it means they're healthy. And it's a very relatively interesting indicator, and it produced an interesting publication, sorry. Yeah. And there's a lot of interesting reasons why we could use it. I think you can play this, please. You can see here, this is a group of broilers. Below this is the processed image, and it shows basically these pixels in the images are moving. It tells us about the activity of the animals. It's a very easy indicator. You can just install this, run this kind of algorithm and get activity levels. The problem is, that this actual technique has a limited monitoring value. What do I mean by monitoring value? Well, it does not tell the farmer what the problem is. If all these birds stopped moving, the farmer would not know, okay, is it something to do with ventilation? Is it something to do with the feeder? Obviously, it's a major thing if every bird stops moving. But if the indicator changes, the reasons behind the change is not evident to the farmer. And that's basically a big challenge that we face when it comes to this kind of technology. But this technology was in the past. We're moving to the future, which is something more interesting based on deep learning. And this has basically given you an idea here that, there's many different reasons for these indicators to change. It could be electricity failure, feeding problems, water problems, the whole shebang. The farmer wants to know, do I need to go to the farm? Do I need to see these animals? And he does not get the reason from this. And that's why we need to make the step towards the future. And I believe AI is part of this. Of course, we need to be careful, but it's definitely part of the solution. Okay, with AI, the interesting thing is we can go to the individual animal. We're not stuck on the group level anymore. And here I want to give you some examples of this. So I'll stay with computer vision, I'll stay with the cameras. And what I showed you a couple of moments ago was basically techniques that were developed back in the 80s and 90s. These very simple techniques that were developed, that we used a lot, but we found they were very limited and also brought limited value to the farmer. But in 2010 and 2012 onwards, we could see a huge development due to deep learning. Deep learning, machine learning advancements brought significant improvement to the whole area of precision livestock farming, because now we could, detect individual animals and follow them on an individual level. And I'll give you some of the examples of doing that. One of the big challenges when it comes to deep learning, and maybe if you use ChatGPT, you would have heard all of these issues with these huge models which have billions of parameters that need many, data centers to run and so on and train. They are big models. And even small models that we work on are still, for our hardware in a research group, are still big models. So there's a real challenge with the size of these models. On the other side, because you're working with agriculture, it needs to be transferable. Every model we develop needs to be transferable, it needs to be scalable, and it needs to be efficient. We need to run it on the edge of the network. It can't be ran in a big data center, because oftentimes, due to internet problems, the farmer will not get the data effectively. So that's a big issue. So let me talk about some of the technology we developed. We did this kind of technology based on computer vision. Click on the... Go back. Yeah. So here we developed a technique to follow the individual animals, look at the movement, see where the head is, see where the tail is, and that can determine the location of these animals. And then we can see, are they feeding, are they drinking, are they fighting with each other? Okay, so that was one part of the technology. We tested this on 30 different farms, so it's usable across different kind of systems. And the next step on that is to track the individuals, please. And when you track the individuals, play this. When you track the individuals, actually you get very interesting information. you can see what animals are doing with each other, and it's really interesting. For instance, we have a big problem in European systems where pigs bite each other's tails. And they bite them so hard that they damage the carcass. And when the farmer goes to the slaughterhouse, he has a big problem to get the value for this carcass. So detecting of tail biting is a very interesting thing. And what you see, and what we learned when you use such a system, is that actually often it's only one pig causing the big problem. One pig is biting the tails of all these animals. And that's what you can do when you're detecting the individuals. Please. Please. Yeah. Yeah, you can go to the next. And then when you track these animals, you have to also assign an ID to these animals. And typically in the past, as animal scientists, I worked with many animal scientists, and what we do is we would paint the back of these animals. We'd paint a different number on the back, so that then we would be able to tell, is it animal 1 that's fighting with animal 2, and so on. But the problem is, after literally 2 days, that paint on the back disappears. So it's no use to a computer vision system, because then you lose the identity of the pig. If you go, and then what we did in collaboration with a breeding company was we designed ear tags. So we put these big ear tags on the pig, and these big ear tags could be seen by the camera. So every time that a pig was lost out of view, as soon as it came back in view, the camera would read the tag, and then we would have the identity again of this pig. So that was the way to solve that problem of painting the back of pigs. So that's the underlying technology. So we can do the detection of those pigs, and we can do the tracking of those pigs. And then that opens up a whole area of different applications of welfare tracking, health tracking, and feed management. And therefore, the different sectors can be involved. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to really understanding animal behavior with this kind of system is understanding the interaction between animals. It's a very interesting aspect, because actually the way animals interact determines how efficient those animals will be, because there's a hierarchy inside a pen. And here we use approaches based on the key points that we detect on the pigs, and then look to the distances between these different tags, or these different key points. And we determine from the distances whether it's going to be a proposed behavior or if it's a real behavior. So you can see there's many behavior proposals. In other words, it could be a behavior that we're after, but then only the classifier determines if it is the behavior. So you can see there's much less red than there is yellow, and that's because there's much less events happening. And I told you earlier on, one of the big challenges we face is this noisy data, a lot of redundancy in data. But when you do this proposals, when you just determine proposals and use those proposals to go into the classifier, then you're reducing your data. You're really compacting your data, and it's high quality data. Please, next. And this is other for fighting and displacement. And what's interesting here is you can see the camera has no problem of determining when behaviors are happening in parallel. So it doesn't have to be that one behavior happens after another. They can happen in parallel, and that's what we're able to do now. Just briefly on this shows how we select the data. So basically at the beginning, you have a whole host of data, this big tall stack of data, and you say to yourself, do I need all of this data to train my model? Well, nowadays, for AI models, you don't need that data. What you need is good quality data. You need to challenge the model with good quality data. So basically, we said, okay, what is a reasonable set of data to send to the model, and how challenging is that data for the model? And you can see in many cases, you can reduce the data tenfold. Next, please. Okay, next, please. That said the same thing. So the next application is monitoring health and behavior status with cameras. This is a case, please click the, please. Yeah. So this is a case where we wanted to challenge the animal For instance, we negatively stimulated the animal by closing them in a box and also sounding an alarm, but we also gave them a positive enrichment to see if it gave them some excitement. And we measured heart rate and we measured movement. And basically what we wanted to interpret from this data, this is data from wearable technology. I'll show you now how we connect to the camera technology in a moment. But what we wanted to do was to see, could we measure the heart rate that was linked with the excitement? Not the heart rate that was linked with the movement, not the heart rate that was linked with the thermoregulation, but the heart rate that was linked with the excitement of the pig. So that was this project. And here, this is the equation. Basically, we separate the heart rate that we measure into different components. We have the physical component, we have the mental component, and that mental component is the excitement component. That's really what integrates welfare. So that's really the sign of welfare. And then we have the basal metabolism, please. And what we could see, we don't have to spend long, but what we could see is that when we frightened the animals, actually this mental component of the heart rate was a component that went extremely high. So it's really, when you cause a stressor of some sort, it's that part of the heart rate that's changing. Yeah, next please. Now, I showed this solution where it was based on a strap that was around the animal, and you were measuring the heart rate and movement. We can do it with a camera. So this is a respiration monitoring. That was respiration monitoring, but this is heart rate monitoring. And the heart rate monitoring can be done also with the camera by looking at the intensity of the pixel changes as a function of time. And we did a very preliminary pilot study to show it's possible. Of course, in the production setting, it's extremely challenging, but at least it's a first step to show it's possible. Okay, another key aspect of monitoring animals with cameras is monitoring the growth. Yeah, that's a production indicator that's valuable to the farmer. And we did many studies trying to link the growth of the animal by matching a bounding box and then looking at an ellipse and then linking the ellipse to the weight of the pig. And we found extremely good correlations over the years. But then when you go to the end of the production cycle, there are some challenging issues. The animals are not always visible to the camera. Sometimes they come in together. And also when they grow, they don't grow physically large, but actually they put down back fat. And the back fat is not easily detectable by the camera. But actually, it's still a very good way to monitor the growth of the animals. And of course, if you monitor the growth of the pigs, then you can start controlling the growth of the pigs. And we did some work, and we're still finishing it, looking at a precision feeding system. So basically, supplying different inputs in terms of high energy food, high protein food, and looking at the supply in terms of weight and also the ratio of these components in the diet. And that's what we were controlling. And that is precision feeding. And we use precision feeding in combination with a camera system so that we know how much of that feed we need to give. This is the scheme, and I showed you this scheme at the beginning in an overall sense, but here, this is the scheme for precision feeding specifically. So we're really doing a control action to really tune the inputs of the feed to the pig. Next, please. Yeah, next, please, I don't need to explain. And then when you tune the feed inputs to the pig, what you find, and this is extremely interesting, these pigs are all the same race, they're all the same breed, but actually what you find is the pig, each pig gets a different amount of feed when you feed them optimally. Yeah? You see, we see the band here between the minimum and the maximum amount of feed, but each pig gets a different amount every day. And that's really interesting. That tells you, if you can control that, then you can also optimize the profitability for the farmer. And where can you see that profitability? Well, you can see it in terms of the feed margins. So that's the margin in terms of the economic profit that the farmer gets above how much he spent on the feed. And we had to do a huge effort to try and do that, because one of the biggest challenges with this kind of technology is really to demonstrate the return on investment. That's the big challenge. So AI is excellent, and its combination with robotics and with control system is excellent, but we still need to demonstrate the return on investment. And that's the big challenge we face. Okay, just some things very quickly about, I'll be less than 5 minutes. So this is a big project, a European project that we run at the moment, looking at the use of artificial intelligence and tracking systems for different animal species. And we have 5 different case studies, 8 different case studies. And we did different activities in the project. We're in our 3rd year of the project at this moment. One activity that might be interesting to you, and it's a freely available resource, is an inventory of all the AI technologies, monitoring and control technologies that are available on the market. So if you have an idea that you want to measure something, or you want to control or manage something in a dairy, pig, or poultry farm, you can find a solution here. So it's a very interesting inventory. And we also we ran a few surveys as part of this. And one of please, next one. Yeah, one of the surveys was asking stakeholders, how did they see the improvement that AI would give the farmer? And most people thought, okay, it's improved animal health and welfare. And that was most of the stakeholders, and we asked a very good range of different stakeholders. Others thought it was in insights. So actually, AI will allow a farmer to get more out of the data that they don't see themselves. And I think that's a very interesting, but that means that we need to collect a lot of that data. Others said about increased feed efficiency. But those were the main feedback that we got back. Please one. So if I was to pull it all together, for me, the future in terms of AI is this situation where we move to a scenario where we can actually model what's happening in the farm and predict problems before they actually happen. And that doesn't mean that we need to actually develop one area of technology much better. It means that we need to join up all these different areas. We need to connect them. And that's the biggest issue that I see now, the connection across the different technologies. Because you have different technology providers, this is very challenging. But if we can do that, we can get to a scenario in the future where we're able to simulate what's happening. We'll be able to say, okay, if there is a big heat wave, what will be the impact and when will it happen? And if I change my heating and cooling system, when should I do it? And that's what we should aim towards, this type of scenario, right? Okay, that's me now. So in terms of conclusions, I basically have a number of conclusions that are standard to me. One thing is, I really believe in the computer vision tool, the tools that are measuring remote from the animals, because we can get a lot of indicators from these tools. And they can become very cost effective and then actually cheap for the farmer. And that's the aim, to make technology as cost effective as possible for the farmer. And there's loads of opportunity with crop production, animal scientists. We need to collaborate, because if we don't collaborate, this kind of technology will not develop in the right way. So thank you very much. I have to say thanks also to the sponsors, and that's my team. I don't do the day-to-day work. These guys are really active. Without them, it doesn't happen. So thanks very much. Put these on. My Spanish is not yet good enough for it. Hopefully you have lots of questions for me.
Sí. Buenos días. Mi pregunta es, hoy, hoy en día cada vez se van buscando, digamos, más alternativas y rigurosidad científica en el tema del agro. Como es, digamos, prioridad la rigurosidad científica en tema de seguridad alimentaria para producir alimentos, en, digamos, estas carreras ya de agropecuaria, agricultura, ¿considerarías necesario, digamos, incorporar obligatoriamente o conocer conceptos básicos de programación, de innovación, de tecnificación, para hacer esa transición, como decías, de lo tradicional a lo moderno en las producciones?
Can I say? Yeah, so I would say I think it should. I think it is the future. The biggest challenge is the level. So you mentioned bachelor students. I think what you can introduce to bachelor students is the potential of the technology. You can introduce the different applications and what can be the end effect, whether it's on profitability, whether it's on the carbon footprint, or the health of the animal. And you can do some partial budgeting, yeah? Partial budgeting is a way to demonstrate what the impact of a technology would be, and they can learn from that. But in terms of the development, if I was you, I would wait until the master level. And with the master level, you can engage them in actually analyzing this kind of data in a way that they can then use it on a farm. I think that master level, they have enough preparation to then start developing interesting things with the data. Yeah. But this. No, 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 no.
Bueno, buenos días a todos. Me pareció súper interesante el tema que acaba de exponer. En cuanto a algo que mencionó en su discurso, es que, por ejemplo, cuando se tienen los animales controlados en un espacio cerrado, estos monitoreos son mucho más fáciles, por decirlo de alguna manera, poderlos seguir. Pero ¿cómo será en un futuro, después de la aplicación de esa normativa que habla acerca de que estos animales estén en espacios abiertos? ¿Cómo va a ser ese monitoreo? ¿Cuál es el reto?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very, very good question. You're completely correct. At the moment, because we have these animals in confined situations, it's actually easier to monitor. So it's easier because it's very intensive, and of course that makes it easier. But in the future, and actually now, with all of these regulations and also with the movement towards more extensive organic systems, the environment around the animal is becoming itself more unpredictable. And that makes it much more challenging. And that's where I invite you guys, the young students, future of agriculture, to get involved in the development of tools that can really deal with these kind of scenarios. Because we need these tools, farmers need the help, but the regulations are forcing the farmer to be faced with these far more difficult situations. So the future is what, I think you guys are the future and you need to be involved in it. So that's my answer.
Buenos días. Muchas gracias por aceptar la invitación del Poli y compartirnos el conocimiento y la experiencia. Yo tendría dos preguntas. Cuando nos contó sobre la variable comportamental bienestar, que fue monitoreada pues, con cámaras y una serie de requerimientos tecnológicos, ¿cómo se alimentó el algoritmo para poder captar en las imágenes esa variable comportamental bienestar? ¿Es claro? Y segundo, si la evaluación comportamental fue por algún aspecto o requerimiento ético de algún organismo pues gubernamental.
Okay, so in terms of how we did it, I ended up in my conclusions by saying it's important to have collaboration. Collaboration is essential in this kind of work because we have many different disciplines. We have the need for veterinarians, we have the need for animal production scientists and farmers, and we need engineers. But we also need people like animal behaviorists, ethologists. These are the people who understand the behavior and are able to help us to classify the behavior. They put data from them viewing the behavior of those animals against the time points of the images that we see it in the video. And our job as engineers is to make a connection between those. So we make a connection. And there we're utilizing tools like deep learning and so on. There are many different methods and we don't have to go into that. But the key is to ensure that the quality of this manual annotation, which is done by the ethologists, is of high accuracy. And ensuring that means that we need to have it done by a number of different ethologists. And we need to score the quality of this rating. We call it inter-rater reliability. So we need to ensure this reliability is there from the human observation. Once we have that observation, we can build our models. So that's core, right? Then number two, your second question, ethical frameworks, it's key. We're operating in Europe. There is nothing that can't be done without an ethical framework or an ethical agreement. So in fact, for us to do a project, we need to spend between 6 months and a year before we do it, planning the ethical agreement. We need to send to our ethical approval board our project, our experimental plan, and they will advise us if the number of animals we include are at an appropriate level for that study, if we should reduce our animals, or even if we should change our type of treatments. So we have a big interaction between the ethical committee before we actually agree on a study. And that's actually in most European universities. That's the way it has to be done. Does that answer? Yeah.
Last question. En español. Profesor Tomás, muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros, por la conferencia tan especial. Yo creo que ahí está el futuro de la producción pecuaria en el mundo. Una pregunta más relacionada con el tema académico es, en Colombia tenemos dificultades, y también lo sé que en Europa y en muchas partes del mundo, con los estudiantes del área de las ciencias agrarias. Muchos muchachos no quieren hacer ni siquiera el bachelor en esas áreas. ¿Qué están haciendo ustedes para atraer los futuros profesionales del área de las ciencias agrarias? Porque son necesarios para el futuro del mundo y es la producción de alimentos. ¿Cómo lo están trabajando desde las universidades y en especial tú en Leuven? ¿Cómo lo están trabajando?
It's a very good question. It's a challenge everywhere in the world. Actually, the number of agricultural students has dropped over the last 10 years by 20 to 50% across the different type of majors in the faculty. So it's a big challenge. In terms of what we're doing, in our department, so our department is the Department of Biosystems, and there we have a big focus on linking the technology with the science. So we make a promise to the students at the very beginning that they're going to be in the middle, that they will get a level of education that allows them to work in interdisciplinary teams. And I believe that's the future. It's no longer that somebody can be just a specialist, even in genetics. They can be a very good geneticist, but they have to also speak to engineers. They have to also speak to production scientists. They also have to speak with different disciplines. That's what we make the promise, because when the students are finished their degree, they will be challenged in industry with dealing with people of different disciplines. And that's how we try and do it within our particular department. And one of the, I would say, the focus towards the end, but this is in the master level, this is not bachelor level, is we have a project that runs over the full year. And the project has about 8 to 10 students in. And we say to them, you develop a concept for a startup company, and you will be supported by the research groups. And you take that idea and you move it all the way to a prototype, and you pitch your prototype in front of the professors. That's a very successful course, and it helps them understand the whole nature of interdisciplinary interactions that are needed. And actually that's, for us, something that is really attracting the students. So we're making that promise that will ensure that they get that training, so when they go in the real world, they won't get a big fright. And I agree with what you said at the beginning about we need these people. And we did a survey not that long ago in the faculty about where do the students get their jobs when they go out. And you know what was incredible was people that were working in nanotechnology, were doing their studies in nanotechnology or in human health. Where were they getting their jobs? In feed companies. They were going to feed companies, going to pharmaceutical companies, working on animal health applications. So they had this vision when they were in university that they didn't want anything to do with animals, but they ended up in a career where they were working to service the animal industry. And I just think that's fascinating, and it's something that we need to use as an argument to get people started at the right time on the right topics. Thanks for the question.
Agradecemos al doctor Thomas Norton, al equipo que está haciendo la traducción en simultánea y a la traductora del lenguaje de señas. Tras esta primera ponencia internacional, nos tomamos un momento para celebrar nuestra identidad y diversidad cultural. La muestra cultural es una invitación a reconocer que la investigación también dialoga con el arte, la tradición y la expresión colectiva. Invitamos, por favor, al equipo de Fomento Cultural. Agradecemos la intervención del equipo de Fomento Cultural del Politécnico Colombiano, Jaime, Cadavid. En este momento damos paso a un breve descanso para compartir, conectar y prepararnos para la siguiente ponencia que nos llevará al corazón de la sabiduría ancestral.
Hola, hola. Muy buenos días. Los invitamos en este instante entonces a que se dirijan por la parte derecha o bueno, izquierda en mi caso. Van a tener la posibilidad de tomar un refrigerio, 10 minutos y nos volvemos a encontrar, ¿vale? Por favor.